And the truth is, I did not make it to 100. I only made it to 45. The second part of the truth is he didn't change a thing. The only thing that changed was my perspective, right? I don't know about you, but I know for me, I love to be around people that take responsibility and are the get shit done kind of people. Like, I love those people, right?
Yes.
I mean, those are my favorite kind of people to be around. It's like, I just want to like hug them all the time. I'm like, yeah. It's
I
like,
agree.
you're my people.
Every time I see you, I want to hug you. So yeah, absolutely.
You're my people, right? Like,
You're my
I
people.
because I think when you are that kind of personality, which, for those who follow the disc profile, I'm clearly a high DI.
Yes.
We have a tendency to take on a lot of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have people around you that are willing to take some of that off your plate or help you with some of it or take responsibility for their part in it,
Yeah.
I love those are my people.
I think what it does for me, it makes me feel safe. I know that
Agreed.
sounds weird, but I feel safe. If I feel like I have to hold it all together, that's when my stress level rises. But when somebody just takes something, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And somebody else takes something.
Like
Right?
one of my favorite people. So I moved a few months ago. I moved into Brent opened a big office. Brent Go, for those of you who
Yeah.
listen, in my market, Roseville, and so it's beautiful. And I have an office within his office, and his right hand guy is Rob. And if you've ever met Rob or talked to Rob, Rob is just one of those, like, he prefers to be behind the scenes. He's not he doesn't want to be out front. He doesn't want to be on stage. He doesn't want to do any of that. But he is like the ultimate, like, get shit done kind of guy. Like, you give him something, I'm like, hey, sometime next week. And like 10 minutes later, it's done. You're like, oh, we all need a Rob in this world. And
Magic.
I just love him. Like, even walking around the office, I can see little like fingerprints of his because he'll put instructions on things and it's really clear and bullet points into. I'm like, oh my, like, even you go back to the printer, it's like, here's exactly what you need to do to use the printer. In other words, he's saying, don't call me. Read the instructions.
You don't even have to read it out. You don't
You
even
know,
have to figure it out. Just start at the top and work your way
number
down.
one, follow the instructions and don't call me is number one, right? Like, he doesn't say that, but that's not him. But it's just so I'm always like so excited when I go into the office and see, well, what else has he touched today? What else did he take care
That
of?
is so true. There's something very gratifying. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I get myself into these projects, right? That I don't really get a lot of instant gratification.
Yeah.
And it's so nice when somebody else is accomplishing something and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I take it in. I'm like, what did you get accomplished today? Yay! And then
Yeah.
for some reason, when they accomplish something, I feel like I accomplished something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what's funny for me though? Then I'm motivated to go back and get something done because I'm competitive.
Too,
So I'm like,
yes.
damn it, they got that done. Now I need to go do something, right?
Oh man, I feel all of that so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So now you're in this phase of real estate. You go over there and you've been through so many seasons in real estate. Like 30 years ago, I think I worked in 91. I worked in my aunt's Remax office. And
Oh,
I'd
did you
write,
really?
yes, you know, those little two lines that you put under the little black and white photo of the house. And it's like a 322 CTG, you know, where like everything was abbreviated and
Right.
stuff like that. I'd write those for her and go to the house and take, and you know, it was my intro to real estate.
Oh, funny.
And like you go from that and how things have progressed and changed. The culture has changed, but you are really in real estate.
Yeah.
What would you say were some huge like transitions in real estate where the industry like freaked out and like the whole industry freaked out and then like it turned out that passed and it went okay.
Well, I've been through a few challenging markets, right?
Right.
I'll tell you the first one that I think was probably the most well. So I got my license in '93. I did loans for 1 year. I said that sucks. I hated doing loans. So God bless all of our lenders out there. I could not do what you
Yeah.
do. I did loans for a year. And by that point, so December 93, I got my license. I got pregnant the summer of 94 and had my son Jacob in February of 95. And I did loans for that year of 94 while I was pregnant. I said, this is not for me. So I went to work as an assistant for a top producing REO broker, Luigi Caprio, if anyone knows who he is. He's been around forever. And I was his assistant. And I went in to help him set up his new computerized MLS.
Ah,
Because we didn't have MLS, right? I mean, the MLS was in books back then. So
right.
I helped him get all that set up. And I remember carrying my son Jacob in a baby carrier, right, into the office. He was a couple months old. He's now 29 and has a baby of his own, my adorable grandson Jaden, who's just the most precious thing on the planet. And I was carrying him around, and I started, and he would say, the phones would ring off the hook. I'd be like, what do you want me to do? He goes, well, answer the phone. So I'm like, okay, well, duh. And I'd say, well, they want to see houses. He's like, well, go show them houses, because I had a real estate license. I'm like, okay. So I started going out showing houses, and then I would come back to the office because we didn't have cell phones then. And I was like, they want to write an offer. He goes, well, write an offer. I was like, okay. Thankfully, back then our contracts were 4 pages long. We didn't do inspections. We didn't have disclosures. I ended up selling 18 houses in my first 6 months. I'm like, I think I like this real estate gig, right?
Better than loans.
Right. So that's really kind of how I started. And it was kind of accidental how I originally got my license to do loans because my husband was in the mortgage business. And he said you could go do refis because interest rates had dropped to an all-time low of 8%. And he's like,
An all-time low of
yeah,
8%.
yeah.
I just
And,
like
and he's
for
like, I know
everybody,
people are freaked out now.
anybody who might be listening to this right now, an all-time low of 8%. I'm just gonna hang on that for just a minute and just kind of bathe in that. Okay.
So that's why I got my real estate license, and I just didn't like the
Wow.
loan business. So I went
Oh
into
gosh.
the real estate side, and I fell in love with the real estate side. And I just remember being so excited when people, when we got, and my average sales price back then was like $83,000, right?
How much
So
are those houses, those $83,000 houses now?
that probably first one that I sold 83 is probably worth 600 now.
600 where?
600,000. I'm in Northern California outside of Sacramento. Yeah.
Outside of same market.
Same house. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
So
God.
well, I like to,
Imagine,
you know,
like you've been in the exact same market for 30 years.
yeah.
Wow.
And so it's interesting because I really didn't have any idea what I was, doing. I just winged it and I just figured it out. And that's why I think it's so valuable to my quote. Like I said, you get paid in direct proportion. You like, what are you going to do to figure it out? And so when you asked about the market, so 2096, then 2004, the market was going crazy because rates were now dropping into the sixes, right? The market was going nuts. Home prices were skyrocketing. Homes were selling like crazy. 2004 to 2006. So I'd now been in almost 10 years. Business was crazy. I was selling 100 plus homes a year. I had my own independent brokerage and I just was hustling. I just had my nose to the grindstone. And at this point, I had kids. My kids were, 8, 9 years old. I used to take them with me a lot, at the time. I loved being
Oh,
in
that's
real
why
estate.
you were doing 100 transactions. You had an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old. I, that was probably the most stressful time of my life.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the year that, Joe and I, that's when the book got
Yes.
inspired.
Yes. Like
So
it's all coming together. Like it makes so much sense now. I'm so
exactly.
excited about your story. Sorry to keep going.
So then 2004 is great. Then guess what happened? To the end of 2005, I remember putting a house on the market in August. And 2 weeks later, we had no showings, no offers, crickets. And I was like, the winds have changed. Something's like, obviously, I had no idea what was going to happen to the market, but I knew something shifted. I immediately started getting BPO requests. I was like, what the heck is a BPO? I started trying to figure out the market was shifting. I was going from 100 homes a year to a lot less, but we were living a 100 home a year lifestyle. So, had to start making some shifts and changes and started learning a little bit about REO and BPOs. And next thing you know, I ended up in the REO world selling 2 and 300 homes a year, getting, you know,
Yeah.
huge asset pools handed to me, not handed to me. I had worked my ass off for them,
Right.
but doing REO, and I had to shift. I had to shift with market. So I would say that for agents to really think about that, right, is that when a market shifts, you have to shift. You have to change. And people are like, I don't like change. Well, too bad. It's the world, right?
Right.
Like the world is changing every minute, every second. You have to adapt and adjust to that
And that's
world.
in every industry, I think. Every
100%.
industry, you have to evolve. Like, I think sometimes people, they're in real estate, they're like, I'm going to go do something else. I'm like, what else are you going to do that's going to give you the same opportunity that real estate offers? All you got to do is just be open to receiving the opportunities that are being given to you. So just like you said, somebody, they came to you and asked about a BPO. What's a BPO? I don't know. I'll go figure it out. You went and
Right.
figured it out. You didn't
Right.
say, oh, I don't know anything about BPOs. I don't want to do those. I'm not comfortable doing those. You went and figured it out.
Well, I even remember because at the time BPOs they would just pay like $50 for a BPO, right? Which a
Right.
BPO, for those who are listening, is a broker price opinion. It's basically a mini appraisal that banks will request in lieu of doing a full blown appraisal, right?
Right.
So, and people are like, I'm not doing a BPO for $50. I'm like, girl, that's milk money for my kids. Like, you know, I have a family to feed. Like, I'm gonna
And
go figure
there was a lot of work.
it. It was a lot of work. We got to the point. So here's what happened with BPOs. I started going online and figuring it out. I started getting approved with some of these companies. I remember there was a company back in the day. I don't know if they're still around. I think they are, Mark to Market. And they were on the East Coast. And I would literally be emailing with the owner of that company who was also trying to figure everything out. Emailing, you know, in the middle of the night, their 3 hour different time zone, how to do these BPOs and how to get the
Yeah.
information. We would drive all day long during daylight to get the pictures. And then I
Yeah.
would sit up till I'd put my kids to bed at 8 o'clock and I'd go sit and do BPOs till wee hours of the morning because I didn't feel like I had a choice. Like I had to figure it out, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
I did have a choice, but I had to figure it out. And I
Well,
knew
what was your
that
choice? To roll over or to figure it out? And you're a figure it out kind of a gal,
yeah.
anyways.
Yeah. And so I figured it out, right? And then, you know, started making sure that I understood about how to do BPOs and started learning about REOs, right? The bank
Mhm.
foreclosures and the real estate owned by, you know, these banks, Fannie Mae, HUD, all that kind of, I just started figuring it out. And I put in a lot of time. I'm not going to lie. It was a very difficult, stressful time to have, you know, young kids, a husband who's traveling, you know, I'm trying to work
Mhm.
going from, I mean, it was a stressful time, but I feel blessed, you know, it's like you look back on your life and you look back at those experiences and how they molded you and how they created the person that you've become, right? I look at them with great gratitude, right? Of
Mhm.
thank you for those challenging times because they taught me how to be a bit more grateful for the good times.
Uh, and it probably kind of like if you like fracture a bone or something, right? That where it heals is the strongest point.
Yeah,
I
it
can
is.
totally see that.
And I
And
think
so
it's so valuable.
yeah, and I makes me think it's kind of like you were brand new, right? When was it? 30 years ago, 93. And then 10 years later, you were kind of like brand new again.
Well, I had to start over.
You
I
had to start
definitely,
over.
and I've had to do that, you know, a couple times. I mean, 2006, obviously, 2010 was the bottom of the market in our area. And then, you know, then we started to have to shift again, right? Because
Mhm.
2014, 15, now all the REOs were going away. So now I had to go back and, you know, redevelop and revisit those relationships and work on how to build and develop a different type of business. And that's where we started to really grow our brokerage and really kind of build it and grow it. Well, then all
Right.
that changed in 2015. We shut down that brokerage, right? My husband got
Why did you
diagnosed
shut down?
a
Yeah.
combination of things. My husband was diagnosed with Parkinson's, so he became our broker of our company. And the stress of running a brokerage with 120 agents was just not worth it. You know, we had three offices and outrageous overhead, and so you know, owning a brokerage is not what people think it is anymore. So 2015, we made the very difficult decision. We're like, this doesn't work for us anymore. And most brokerages, in our case, was no different. We were
Which
not able
means
to.
anymore? Like there was a before and an after. You said it wasn't cracked up to what it like it wasn't the same anymore, other than your husband's Parkinson's. diagnosis. What else changed?
Well, I think a few things. The industry was changing dramatically during that time, going from the REO focused to back to a normal market. We had a lot of agents. We had one particular brokerage that came into town that specifically targeted our office. So they ended up taking 20 of our top producing agents. So that
Oh,
impacted us pretty significantly financially. And just really, when I really looked at the brokerage, most brokerages are in the same boat. The main income producer is usually the owner of the brokerage, which was me. So if you pulled my personal production out of the equation, the
hmm.
company was hemorrhaging and it didn't make financial sense. Effectively, I was working to support 120 agents that didn't want to work. So that, I think, is really, most brokerages operate under that same, most brokerages have 20 to 25 agents and the top producer is the broker owner. And if it's like, okay, great. You basically, what you did is you bought yourself a job and you're taking a good percentage of your income and you're giving it back to these 20, 25 agents who are not putting in the work and the effort. So that no longer made sense for us. So we shut down that brokerage, went back to being just a small independent. We had 10 agents who said, we're going wherever you are. So we kept those. And then it was 2016 when I got a call from Brent Gove and he said, hey, will you look at this model? I was like, no, thanks, Brent. I mean, I'd known Brent for a long time. He was even one of the people who I remember, and he tells this story frequently. He called me one day, and I think it was in 2014 or anyway, called me one day. I'm driving home from work at 6 o'clock at night, and I'm like, hey, Brent, how's things going? All of a sudden, he starts crying on the phone. I'm like, I think I need to pull over. So I
That's
pulled
not.
over.
This is not Brent-esque.
No. And I
Yeah.
said, what's going on? And he was struggling at that time with his marriage to Kathy. He
Mhm.
was sleeping on a friend's couch. He was like, and I'm like, okay, Brent, let me tell you the story. And I told him the story of, because I didn't have the book out yet.
Oh,
And I'm not saying I'm solely responsible, but at least he went back and started trying to figure out how he could make this work. And thankfully, him and Kathy are here today. But he started talking about this. I go, no, I'm not interested. I'm not joining another company. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, thank you.
mhm.
Well, Brent's pretty relentless. He showed up the next day, calls me on the phone. He says, hey, do you want to go to lunch? I'm like, where are you? He goes, across the street. And I'm like, what? So I ended up going to lunch with him. He spent the whole hour asking me about me, Joe, like what's going on with life. And I'm like, okay, Brent, what are you selling? Because I know Brent well enough to know he had something going on. He goes, no, no. He goes, can you be at my office tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock and bring Joe? I'm like, oh, Brent, really? I'm like, okay. So I went to his office the next morning, brought Joe, and they did the live webinars back then with Rob Flick.
Yeah.
It was 2 hours on this webinar with Brent and Rob. And literally, probably 15 minutes in, I'm like, this makes sense. And we joined EXP. And that has been a game changer for us. Then we met you like 2 or 3 months later in Puerto Vallarta, I think, maybe not
Yes.
even, maybe 6 months. It wasn't very long after.
Yeah.
And that picture just popped up the other day there were like 80 of us in that
Yeah.
picture. Do you remember the picture?
Looking
It popped
down.
up.
Yes.
Yeah. It popped up a few days ago in my memory. So it must have been around April or May of 2017. And it's been a game changer for us in our lives
Yeah.
in every way possible. And I'm so grateful. It's how I met you.
I know. I have some of my. I was telling somebody the other day. I have some of my best friends from that Puerto Vallarta trip. Those Puerto Vallarta trips,
Yeah.
and I always recommend everybody going.
Yeah.
So you've basically started over. You've mentioned you kind of started over multiple times, different seasons. So a lot of times when I visit with new agents, they're like, "I've never done this before," and they're afraid to try to they don't have the confidence in themselves that they'll figure it out. Like that idea, they're like, I feel like I need to go learn this before I go do it. Instead of thinking to themselves, okay, I know the foundation. I have faith that I learn the foundation. I've got people in my life, like I'll figure it out. What do you think is like what is the bridge between that I'll figure it out and I need to figure it out before I go figure it out? How do you like
Well,
that
I
gap?
would take this back to how do the majority of people learn? They learn by actually doing something, not by
Yeah.
talking about it. I mean, you can be book smart all day long, right? Like you can have a college degree in real. I know people who literally have a degree in real estate
Yeah.
and could not sell their way out of a paper bag.
Yeah.
So it's, I think you just have to jump. It's kind of like standing on the end of a high dive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can stand there for days. You could even have watched a million videos about it. You could
Mm-hmm.
know people who are professional, divers. I like think about it like a bicycle. We can talk all day long about riding a bike. I can
Mm-hmm.
send you to YouTube. You can watch hundreds of videos about riding a bicycle. You could go to school and learn how to take bikes apart and put them back together. You could learn how to inventory a bike. You can do all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
at some point, you have to get on the bicycle. And when you get on that bicycle, one of two things happens. You either soar down the road or you crash. And
Mm-hmm.
if you crash, what do? You either get back up and get on the bike, or you go, screw that, and you leave the bike there and you go do something else. Like
That
what?
damn bike.
Right. You
It's a
can blame the
bike's
bike.
fault.
It's the bike's fault. So, that's really kind of what real estate is. I can train you till the cows come home about real estate. But then here's what happens. You get in the middle of a deal and everything I trained you on, you completely forgot about. You don't even remember what
And it
you
didn't work out that way anyways. It worked out,
didn't
it
work out that
went
way
on a
anyway.
different path. Yeah.
100%. So
Well,
that's how I,
and Juan and I, like sometimes we hang out over coffee in the mornings, we just chit chat. And we were actually talking about the bike, like the bike story. And I was like thinking about so much is an analogy to that bike because so often people will get on the bike and they do that first pedal,
yeah,
right? And then they like see what happens, but then when they see what happens, that's when they go off kilter and
right,
that's when they fall. What
right,
they need to do is they need to pedal. Because if you ever teach somebody how to ride a bike, you're like pedal, pedal, pedal,
yeah,
pedal, 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 harder, right? And that it's that pedaling that keeps you balanced, that
right.
keeps you being able to go forward and able to go
Keep
and
moving.
keep moving. I think like so often people pedal and they're like they start looking around. No, no, pedal again, as fast and as hard as you can.
What's
So
that? I just was telling somebody, I was talking to somebody this morning, that movie, Nemo, remember Nemo?
mhm.
Keep swimming, keep swimming. And, I just think that I agree 100%. Like you just have to keep moving and keep working and keep doing the work, and the
Mhm.
universe will reward you for that. But you have to do the work. You can't
You
just
have
sit
to
around and say, hey, send me buyers and sellers. I'm not going to do anything and get a paycheck. Like that's not how the universe works.
well, that's usually not how it works. And they think, oh, I'm going to go get a job, right? But if you go get a job, I like if you would just do what you do at work, or if you went to get a job, I assume, right? It's been a long time since I've had a job, but I hear that like they got to show up, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, 5 o'clock, and somebody's telling them what to do, and they got to work their katushies off, but they like they're in their own little space, their own little world, and it just doesn't seem joyful,
Right.
right? Like, what are they like? And I'm not saying that's everybody's job, but I
Right.
just see that sometimes where people are just miserable in their job and they say they want to get out of that misery.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay,
Right.
you bust
Well,
your
it's like people bouncing from brokerage to brokerage, right? They think that
oh
it's
yeah,
going to be, I'm like, if you would have done what you think you're going to do at the new brokerage, at this brokerage, right?
right,
And whatever brokerage it is, it doesn't matter. The fact is
right.
they always think that somebody's going to have an easy button, and that's just not how the world works.
And who wants it to be easy anyways? Like easy, that's like easy makes you flabby.
That's a great quote. I'm not sure I can talk on. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's because my sensor doesn't always work. But I love that so much because I do see that sometimes, and sometimes folks will they have excuses and reasons, and I'm like, and I see so much potential in so many people, right? And you just know that they can do it. And sometimes they're just afraid to like they're afraid of something. How do you help people get over being afraid of whatever made up story that they've decided to latch onto so that they don't have to take that next step to succeed?
Well, so one of my favorite influencers that I follow is a guy named Mike Dooley, and he says, "Don't worry about the cursed hows." Right? And so, what does he mean by that? If your vision, your dream, your why is big enough, then the hows won't matter. You're going to get there.
Yeah.
And how you're going to do it, who knows? I don't know. And you have to be okay with that. I don't know, right? You have to be
Right.
okay with, I just know the universe is going to provide, or God, or whatever it is you believe in is going to provide if your why is big enough. Like for me, my why was my kids and my family, right? My
Yeah.
girlfriend calls it the empty refrigerator syndrome because, again, I grew up with a single mom and we were pretty poor and homeless at a period of time in our life. And I remember opening the refrigerator and there only being a jar of mayonnaise and a loaf of bread in there, right? And so we made mayonnaise sandwiches because that's what you do. And so I did not want that life for my kids and my
Mhm.
family. So that was always in the back of my head. So the crazy part is I now have literally a huge pantry. I have two huge, three refrigerators. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's over the top
You
ridiculous.
compensated.
I overcompensated, right? But that's what is is my why. So you have to figure out what is your why. Why are you doing this? If
You know,
you're
I
doing it
had
to be a hobby or just for the fun of it, then it's not going to work, right?
right,
But well, it could, but you're going to get hobby results. So
right.
it's you have to have a why. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? What's important to you? If you can figure that out, then all the rest of the stuff's not going to matter. It's really not going to matter. You're going to find a way, just like I did in real estate. I was like, well, I'm clearly not employable, so I can't go get a job.
So we just made one up and hope people pay us. We're not just kidding.
Well, I
We
can't.
write books, we do podcasts, we sell
Yeah,
houses, we do a little
I'm
bit
not
of
employable. So I knew I couldn't just go get a job. And it also didn't make sense for me to go get a job with kids at home and all that I had going
right.
on in my life. So,
And you're so
yeah,
incredibly talented and driven. And yeah, I can totally see
thank you, my dear.
I I can totally see why you bet on yourself.
Yeah. Well, I
For your
didn't know. I just didn't, I don't, like I said, I didn't have a backup plan. I was so blown away by what was possible in real estate that I can't imagine being anywhere else. I mean, I get frustrated, don't get me wrong. I'm human. I get times where I'm like, I'm going to go get a job at Taco Bell because I know there can't be any stress at Taco Bell. And I go into Taco Bell and I see the cashier freaking out and the guy behind trying to make tacos. I'm like, okay, well, there's stress everywhere. So
yeah.
it is what it is. You got to make the best of it and find a way to work through it.
Yeah, I'm grateful for this. And it's funny because I joke that I'm unemployable, right? But it's not, I think it's more my disposition. I hate
Yeah.
to be that way. Like, I like that freedom, that disposition of having the freedom to
Agree.
imagine, to create, to kind of course correct at will,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To not have to do something just because somebody said, right?
Yeah.
It's those little things that I couldn't imagine. Like I had a job one time and I was like, well, why are we doing it like this instead of that? And they're like, well, that's the way we do it. And I'm like, but isn't that, can we just try this? I think this could work out really much better. And I
Yeah.
just love the possibilities. I love the opportunity to have the possibilities. And
Yeah.
I think
Agreed.
real estate gives us that, or real estate gives us those opportunities to have the possibilities to go towards our what ifs, right?
100%. Yeah.
Oh man. So, oh golly, I just saw the time. I was like, I know you were like, I was like, and I really appreciate this hour with you. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm so grateful. And I look forward to having you on my podcast too. So
I'll see you Friday.
I know, I can't wait.